more minute. I need one of those countdown timers that I've got when I do my live streams.
Yes, that's cool.
So I know that the two in the back row, you guys have never collected art before, but Socrates, you've collected for a long time, right?
20 years, yeah.
Quite a while.
Yeah, 22.
All right, that's about when I started, around '98. And how about you?
I'm here to learn everything.
You're here to learn. All right, so never bought before.
No.
All right, good. And how about you?
I'm Scott Spilkey. So
Oh, Scott Spilkey. All right, you were asking. You were trying to.
I have a zillion pieces on CAF,
Yes, you do.
and I've been collecting for like 10, 15 years.
Awesome. Well, nice to meet you. You've been in the chats before.
I have. I've enjoyed the live streams and the shows and dueling dealers and the interviews. It's been awesome.
Wow. This isn't a self-help group, everybody. We're all addicts when it comes to collecting original art, but we can't offer you any advice on how to break the habit once you get started collecting original art. So we might as well get started. We'll go ahead and introduce each other. For me, I'm Bill Cox. I created Comic Art Fans. It's the largest website on the internet for people who collect original art and like to share their collections. Collecting original art is a hobby that really people who are in it, they cherish these things, because at the end of the day, a piece of original art is a one-of-a-kind item. It's not something that, it's not collecting comics where there's going to be, 100 9.8s in a particular grade. There's only one item for it. And so whether it's a published piece of artwork or it's a convention sketch that you might get from Bill or another artist that's down in Artist Alley, these things are one of a kind, and they're really, so as a hobby, it's something that, as collectors, we cherish it, and once some of us get turned on to it, we almost never look back at collecting comics, because it's just so much fun, and it's so unique, and in many cases, you get to meet your creators in a different way than you wouldn't get the opportunity if you're collecting comic books, right? If you're collecting comics, you're buying them from a store, typically, but if you're buying original art, you might be buying it directly from Bill, who drew the artwork, you might be buying it from Ken, who reps artists. Either way, you're creating a different kind of relationship with the person that you're picking the merchandise up from, and you do not get that when you're buying comic books. So when I started collecting original art back in around '98, the internet was just new, and I was an internet developer, and I looked at the hobby, and it was a very closed hobby. Original comic art was something where primarily I feel like it was majorly dominated by those who were dealing in original art. If you didn't know people, you couldn't get your foot in the door to buy anything. And there wasn't anybody really showing off their artwork in any major way from their collections. And so as a new collector, I felt like my gateway to getting to meet other collectors and get my foot in the door with the dealers was to create a website that allowed me to give collectors a free place to post all of their artwork collections, and at the same time get to know other collectors. So that was the strategy, and it worked. I mean, people wanted free space to show off their collections because they had all this great stuff and they had no way to let other people know what they had. And so now, 20 years later, Comic Art Fans has over, I'd say, 20,000 active collectors using the site every week, and we've got over 1 million pieces of art posted in the galleries that each of the collectors have created. And it's created a really nice community for the hobby, and friendships have been made. I mean, if I know Bill collects something that I like, I'd probably reach out to Bill and ask him about, whether or not if there's a piece in his collection maybe he wants to sell one day. And so, as a community, Comic Art Fans kind of gave us a place to get to know one another and really put the hobby on a level playing field, I think, because, like I said, it was earlier controlled by people who had the art or who rep the artists, but then it became more of a place where the collectors had a little bit more say and influence in the way the hobby went. Collectors could buy and sell between each other on the site or trade, and it changed a lot of aspects to the hobby that I think were impediments to a person like me who was new in 1998. So that's the story of CAF in a kind of a nutshell. But Bill, you've been collecting a lot longer than me, so.
Actually, I don't think so.
Really? I thought you started even before I started.
I was trying to think back to when I started collecting, and I think it started with Dan DeCarlo, so I think it was like around 97.
So maybe about the same time.
Yeah. And it was when I started doing my Roswell comic.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point I started, I had on the back, I took a page from Mike Allred's book, and I started doing, commissioning a pinup for every issue by an artist that I liked. So one issue I wanted a Dan DiCarlo pinup of my characters, and I reached out to him. And I think it was then that I made friends with Dan, and I was at a convention with him because we were friends. He kind of put us together, and I saw all the art that he was selling, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And yeah, you're pricing that way too low. You know, are you kidding me, Dan? $20 for that? And I was like, I should buy some of this, but I'm going to pay you what it's worth, what I think it's worth, which is way more than what you think it's worth, obviously. And I remember I bought some pieces from him, and then it was like a light switch turned on, which is weird for me because being a comic artist already and being an illustrator before that, I did movie posters. I mean, I knew what original art was, and I knew, you know, I was familiar with it, and I was familiar with other artists, but it never occurred to me to start collecting it. But
Were you selling your own art by then, or just?
no. There was a thing with The Simpsons with Bongo where we were not allowed to sell the originals. Like, we didn't get the originals back.
Oh, wow.
And when we set up Bongo initially, that was the mandate from the business people, the legal people. And Steve Mance, who was the editor, spoke out against that, and he said, you know, we're going to look like the villains of the industry because we will be the only company that doesn't return original art. And the lawyers were still dead set against it, and Steve said, well, if we're going to do that, then we have to build in a buyout fee. So we did, and we ended up having like the biggest page rates in the industry. But because of that, I didn't have art to sell, because at that time, all I was really doing was Simpsons for the most part. And then when I did other things, I would usually donate to charity auctions and things like that. But I don't remember actively selling.
So no published originals of yours were actually getting out.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, you know, I think getting that first piece from Dan, it was like, oh, this is cool. I got to do this some more. And then when I discovered comic art fans through some friends who were collectors, that was just like another level. And I've been a premium member for years, and I love the perks from that. And it's just a fun hobby. You know, it's one of those
It should
things.
be fun, right?
It is.
At the end of the day, that's the beauty of the hobby, is that, again, it's one where we like to share. We like the relationships that we make within the hobby with fellow collectors that are interested in the same works that we are. And
Yeah.
it's really unique at the end of the day. I mean, there's a lot of people who like Spider-Man comics, right? But they don't get together and hang out and talk about how much they love Spider-Man comics, right? But as art collectors, you know, we love to be able to talk about how much we love a particular title, or you know, I've never owned a Dan DiCarlo. I'd love to own one. And I think that one of the great things too is, I had Nick Patera on an interview recently, and he's done a few self-published books, and he talked about how he bought a lot of the artwork that he was commissioning for different covers and things. And so I think that's interesting that for you, your first art purchase was something that you commissioned from your own book, from an artist that you wanted to own. I think that's great.
Yeah. And I just love being able, I mean, I can't really imagine before a thing like comic art fans, being a collector. It must have been frustrating being a collector and not having the ability to like show your collection.
Right.
That's such a cool thing, and I love it when I get these little emails, you know, where somebody made a comment on something that I had in one of my galleries. It's just one of those things you look forward to.
Yep. Well, that's why you share it. Yeah, that's the whole thing about it. I mean, because you share it, you're hoping you get comments. You want to see people, you know that people are looking at your artwork and appreciating your collection.
Yeah.
So Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Ken, you're an art rep, new art rep. You've only been doing it for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, barely. Yeah, I'm only here because I heard there were cookies. No, I was born out of the pandemic, 4C Comics. I started working a little bit with, I met Larry Stroman, and Larry had a reputation for not delivering art. And as I talked to him, I realized that he actually had the art. He just wasn't physically delivering it. So I offered to help him out. And I realized that there was something to be had here. I worked in sports marketing for 25 years. I used to do what I do now with athletes. So I realized that, you know, the faces change, but the poop smells the same. So it's just an easy transition. And then actually I met Bill pretty soon after that. And I was actually facilitating some sales between him and Anthony from Anthony's Comic Art. And then Bill and I just started to get a little more of a rapport and started to build there. And then he was desperate and asked me to help him become his artwork. But no, Bill was a great guy, and yeah, we just worked together really well, and that started to blossom into other things, and 4C was born. And it was born, you know, like I said, it was out of the pandemic. I do live art sale or live sketch ops on Facebook and YouTube. And, I use CAF all the time. So it was, and like I said, it was a very easy transition for me from the sports to the comic art. I've only been collecting
Well,
art
nicer,
for about
right?
5 years. I'm sorry?
Comic artists are nicer, right?
Yeah. Much easier to deal with.
Or easier
A little sometimes. But yeah, but it's been such a wild ride. I mean, just to talk about Bill, not only is he an amazing guy, phenomenal artist. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who drew the House poster and the Little Mermaid poster, but also the Simpsons. I mean, just an eclectic range of art he can do. But I was fortunate enough to go to his home and go through his art, because he doesn't have things well organized. He's got, you know, piles and piles of stuff all over the place. Not only his own art, but also art that he collects. So I was helping him sort things. And as I was going through the thing, I actually literally put together Simpsons #1, the pencils. Because he has the pencils, he doesn't have the inks, which we actually find on production, but he has his pencil. So I was able to put the whole, from cover to cover, because it's actually got a back cover. I was actually able to assemble that, and you know, just seeing this stuff is fantastic. And what I like about collecting art is the art. I mean, I'm a fan of somebody's talent, their work, the amount of effort that goes into it. It's true art. It's, you know, people say, oh, it's comic book stuff. Man, look at this stuff. I mean, look at this stuff on the screen. I mean, the talent and the years that must go into doing that is just fantastic. It's really art. Someday my wife will let me have one up.
We've seen your office on the street. You really some art.
I commandeered a room, that's all I get. But that's the office. But no, it's a lot of fun. And you know, being able to, the other thing with 4C is we try to keep things affordable. We're not those guys who, occasionally, we'll throw up a big piece of art, but we try to keep the stuff affordable, because we're collectors too. I mean, I bought 3 pieces of art in the last 2 weeks, you know, personally. You know, so I'm still out there buying stuff and doing things. After the time with Bill, it's always like, Bill, instead of me taking a commission, can I have this?
Yeah.
I have so much Bill Morrisson art, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, I'm a collector, you know, not just art, right? I'm sensitive to collectors and what they need and what they want. That's what it's all about. We're just trying to help each other through the hobby. Met Bill through, through Comic Art Fans, of course. He was so generous to let us do things, advertise. I think it was the last, CAF Comic Art Live. He let me actually broadcast on Comic Art Live as we did some stuff. So yeah, so it's, you know, it's funny. We just physically met each other a few days ago. We went out to dinner with Jim Shooter. It's like, oh yeah, we see each other so many times on screen, and now we get to see each other face to face.
Yeah, the last couple of years have been pretty interesting, but
Yeah.
as a, you know, for the hobby and just in general,
Yeah.
for all, I've done live streams. Yesterday was my 2nd anniversary for doing 2 years of live streams. I'm usually doing about 3 to 5 a week, just to kind of just outreach to the hobby is what they were for. But it's nice to finally be able to get in front of people again. That's we've all been missing that, I'm sure. I mean, that's why we're here today. But you know, one of the things we should kind of talk about, since we have some people who have not collected original art before, is just, you know, where do you get it, right? A con is a great place to get started, because here, Megacon is one of the, I mean, there's probably another like 5 or 6 other shows about this size, but Megacon is one of the cons that has a lot of artists at it. So in Artist Alley, there's going to be 125 artists that are set up. A lot of them have published originals, laid out portfolios in front of them. You know, if you want to get a published piece, I mean, a lot of collectors sort of start, you know, on the commission or convention sketch sort of thing. The artwork that's on the screen right now is something that I picked up from George Perez back in '06, I won the opportunity to have lunch with George through the Hero Initiative, and so I took my son and he basically asked my son what we wanted to get as a drawing, and this was right before. No, this was just after the JLA Avengers work came out, and so my son said, I want Superman and Thor, and he said he wants them friendly though. And George Price was like, you want them friendly? And he goes, everybody always wants them fighting. And my son was like, no, they gotta be friends. So, Ashton's like 6 years old, so, but the thing was, again, see, that's an experience that you wouldn't get in any other way. And, I'm sure I had to spend a couple $100 as a donation to a really important charity, which is the Hero Initiative. But I got a wonderful, opportunity to sit down with a gentleman who's like one of the most important comic book illustrators, of all time. And just passed away, an incredible man, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the hobby. And so to have a piece of art by him is just, I feel incredibly fortunate. And it's not a published piece. A published piece of his could sell for anywhere between $700 to $2,000 these days. But back in the day, you could get a convention sketch from George for $150. Just get in his line and pick something up. And he had really, really great guy to have got to pick something up. And I'll cherish this for the rest of my life. It would be not something I would ever sell. You can't put a price tag on that. And that's the other thing about original art collecting too is, because it's not comics, it's not as regulated. There's no price guide for original comic art. So it's something that, everybody kind of sets their own prices. If it's an artist doing convention sketches here, they know what they want to charge for a head sketch or, a full figure. Size is always important with the paper. If you're getting something on 9x12, it could be $150, but if you're getting it on 11x17, it could be $350 to $500. You just never know. It's really based on what the creators kind of set their rates at for the roast. So, but so if we're looking for original art, cons are a great place to kind of get your feet wet. Because you don't have to spend a whole lot of money, and you don't have to focus on all the published pieces that are out there, but you can get nice pieces that are affordably priced. This is actually my first piece of original art that I ever picked up that's a published piece. It's simple. I think it cost me $70. It probably wouldn't be $70 today. It might be $250 today, but it hasn't appreciated a whole lot. But I bought this in '99. I believe it's from Uncanny X-Men. Ian Churchill, right? I love that panel as well. So it's just a really nice pen and ink published page that I picked up on eBay and picked up at a con. The guy who sold it to me was showing up at the Pittsburgh Con like the next weekend, so I just picked it up there. So there's lots of different ways that you can own original art or pick up original art, whether it's at a con. eBay's a nice place if you're, as an option. There are a lot of art reps who have websites like Ken. Actually, you don't have an official website because you do it all through Facebook.
I do it all through Facebook, yeah, direct contact.
Yeah, but art reps, to me, a lot of artists sell direct, but at the end of the day, when we look at the hobby, I'd rather have Bill making artwork. I don't want to have Bill selling art. That'll keep you from drawing, right? So reps play a really important part in the ecosystem of original art collecting because they're the ones who, the artist just sends them a FedEx box with some art in it, and the rep takes care of scanning it, pricing it, putting it out on the market and selling it. And so reps are super duper important in the hobby, and it's really I'd say in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there might have been maybe 5 or 6, reps that were handling things, and today there's at least, I'd say there's probably 120 reps across, globally, probably even more than that, just because the opportunity, the comics have been, there's a lot more published work out there, and again, but what has it done is it's helped get more artwork out in the collector's hands, because now you've got, because you might only be able to see the artist at a show, right? But now the reps, they're aggressively marketing the artwork, so it's just getting more artwork into the hands of fans, and that's really what we want at the end of the day. I want more reps in the field. There's so much art to go around that, we could probably add another 120 reps, and it wouldn't impact Ken's business or any other rep's business, because there's that many artists out there creating artwork today.
Yeah, there's definitely people out there who don't like reps. Oh, reps charge, they upcharge, they sell, I gotta pay more for it. But the thing about our reps is we help the artists get the art delivered. If you look on, there's a Facebook group called Buyer Beware, and it's all about artists who aren't delivering their art. And if you look at those people, they're people who don't have reps. You know, and it's just about being busy. I mean, Bill can probably attest to it. You know, he's got work to do. You know, he's a working artist. So in order, you know, although he loves to sell his original art, you know, maybe it's piling up. You know, the orders are piling up, and he's got a deadline he's got to hit. He's got to do this thing. He's got to, and then next thing you know, people are getting upset because they're not getting their art. That's when our rep comes in, because we help them keep organized. And are you going to pay a little more for it? Yes, but you know, that's the price of the service we're offering.
I also get a lot of requests that before I hooked up with you, I would have to just ignore because I was just too busy to just organize myself enough to do a commission or to find a piece of art, you know, like a Simpsons preliminary or something. And like when Ken was talking about coming up to my house, he went through boxes and boxes and pulled things out. I was like, okay, this is stuff, you know, this probably won't sell, but this will, so let's put it in this file.
And then
Organize
everything
things in
doesn't
that.
want to sell.
Yeah.
So this whole dining room table is just art everywhere. And we have yes or no? No, okay. We're just doing that constantly.
So if somebody contacts me and says, I want a drawing of vendor, you know, do you have any published stuff? Now I can go right to the folder and, or I can call Ken and say, where'd that folder go that had all this drawing stuff?
You know, and for new collectors out there, there's no right way, wrong way to do it. You can collect published art. You can collect commissions. You know, you can collect. You know, I personally, I like commissions, but I don't like to commission an artist. I like finished pieces. Unfortunately, in my experience, whenever I commission an artist to do something, no matter how much I tell them what I want to see, it doesn't come out the way I want. So I would rather buy something like this that Bill's showing here that I like, and buy it finished already. You know, because I know I like it. But if I commissioned it and asked him for it, it didn't come out the way I envisioned it, then I'd get kind of upset about it. But yeah, pages, original art pages, and published stuff. I don't think people really realize that there are so many artists nowadays who are moving to digital. This is going to become a very rare thing to find. I mean, 10 years from now, there might not be guys who draw on pages anymore. It might all be digital. So you either got one of two choices: buy monoprints, which is a whole different discussion, or go back and buy stuff that they've done in the past. Because I think this stuff is going to just become more rare, and we've seen the price jumps that's happening. And I think that's stuff that's going to happen more and more often as this stuff becomes harder and harder to get.
Yep, no, I agree. I completely agree. So I showed a Charlie Adler convention sketch that I've gotten. That was one that I had drawn, had done at the show where Charlie was offering sketch opportunities. So I just said, you know, give me a rip, you know, from the show and from his comic. And so Charlie did that for me at New York Comic Con probably 5 years ago. So Charlie was the main artist on the book, and so that was fun. You know, and again, got to meet him, got to hang out, have dinner with him that night, and get a sketch from him. Charlie is, and then this is Kevin McGuire. It's something that at a show like this was picked up at Philadelphia last month. So a lot of times artists, when they go to a show like Megacon or any major show, they're going to pre-draw a lot of artwork. So this was one that wasn't drawn at the show, but that he had done ahead of time and has had in his portfolio as works that he was offering for sale. So and I think I didn't get it. I had a friend pick it up for me when he showed me a picture of it. But you know, he might have had 20 of those on the table, and I think they were all priced between $100 and $200. And it's it's probably a 5x8 illustration, but really nice, right? And I like Loki, and so that's why my friend sent me the picture of it, so I could pick it up.
He kind of looks like Will Forte.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? But there's a lot, but I can show off this piece here. This is probably one of my more expensive pieces that I've got. Really not the most expensive, but yeah, Jack Kirby, Thor page from issue 149.
That's a good action page.
I wouldn't put that in front of Bill for long.
Vince Galetta inks, but I got this. I actually got this in trade with an art dealer for some work that I had done for me. I got it from him basically through the work that I do on the live stream sales show. But a piece of art like this, the market's so crazy right now. I wouldn't even know. When I got it about a year ago. It was valued around $4,500, and I think that these pages are selling on Heritage today for between $8 and $12. So you just, again, this is a piece of art that was done in 60 69, maybe 68, around in there.
Yeah, it looks like.
Actually, you know,
page
it's
size.
probably got the stamp on the back of it.
He's post 68.
Right, it's not twice up.
Yeah.
I like all your stickers back there from Anthony.
I know, yeah, he's good at marketing. But so that's, you know, as a new collector, that's not probably where most people are going to start. But, and for me, I couldn't afford to pay cash for it. So if I was fortunate enough to have some trade room with the dealer, so I was able to pick up the pieces effectively for nothing. But there are, you know, there are a lot of other pieces that you can pick up. I got a nice sketch from Joe Sinnott that I picked up from Anthony as well. Character pieces with the, you know, with the Fantastic Four, just really, really nice. I mean, I'm sure that when Joe did that, he probably did it at a con, and you know, at the time he probably did it for $40. You can only imagine. But when I picked it up about a year and a half ago, it was I think it was around $1,000, $800, something like that. But Joe passed away about a year and a half ago, I think, yeah, just as the pandemic started. So there's no work out there by him any longer. And he's one of the most prolific inkers in, well, I mean, he made Marvel Comics. You know, he grew up on Marvel Comics in the 70s and 80s. I mean, he inked all the major creators and titles, and you know, Marvel Comics looks like it does because of Joe Sinnott.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, another just fantastic human being. I got to meet him many times at cons, and again, it's a way of interacting in the hobby that you just don't get with any other aspect of it. When you get to meet the guys who made the works that, you know, that contributed to the comics that you grew up on and loved. So, and again, that's a con sketch that you know, you could get somebody to draw for you today, and you know, but always protect them. I mean, you see everything we've got up here. I usually have a Mylar or a carrier portfolio around. The one thing that we as collectors always think about ourselves is we're like caretakers of the artwork that you get, because like that Kirby piece I showed you, you know, that thing's been around for the, oh, you know, what did I say? It's probably 40, 50 years. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing is, it's in your hands now. So you got to make sure that, you know, you're storing it well, keeping it in Mylar in a nice dry space. You know, you don't want to have too much humidity. You got to take care of these things, because at the end of the day, you're carrying around a piece of history. I mean, museums are finally catching on that these artworks belong to be, you know, should be shown as a real, true piece of American art history. And you know, there's a traveling show that's in Columbus right now. Jim Steranko recently, and I think still has a show in Youngstown. Very, you know, prolific, you know, artist, does a lot of pulp work now, and you know, I think people are finally catching on that these things that we've been collecting and knew were fantastic and deserve to be hanging on a wall in a museum or a gallery. They're, you know, it's finally happening, fortunately. And but the thing you always have to remember, though, is that, you know, you are the one who owns it, and you have to take care of it, because the last thing you want is to have something get damaged, lost, stolen. You know, it's because things like that have always happened in this hobby.
I have a funny joke. So, 4C, Jeff, my partner, we're starting an original art department. So he's buying a lot of art, reselling it. So yesterday he said to me, "Hey, I sold the Joe Sinnott piece." I was like, "Really? Awesome." He said, "Yeah. Guess who bought it?" I said, "Who? Morrisson, right?" Yeah. That was a hard sell, I guess. We're right behind the table.
It was great, because I asked Ken how much money I'd made so far that day at the booth, and he told me. I was like, "Okay, I can afford this."
Usually he says, "Hey, guy, can I have some allowance?" It's funny, we do a lot of cons together, and people will come to the table and they'll say, "Where's Bill?" He's shopping. You know, he's buying comics. And he loves Golden Age stuff. I mean, he comes back to the table with a big stack of Lois Lane and stuff. He's like, "Oh, look at this." He just loves that stuff.
That's another aspect of collecting. Like I tend to like kind of oddball stuff. Like, I don't have a lot of superhero art. I have some, but I have weird stuff by superhero artists, and I find that really fun. I like the different genres. You know, sometimes the well-known artist has dipped into humor at some point, or crime, or horror. I love collecting that stuff, because a lot of times it's just as great as anything else. Good example is Frank Robbins, who drew what's the Marvel
Invaders.
Golden Age group, the Invaders, thank you. Do the Invaders, he did the Shadow for DC, he did a lot of stuff for Marvel, like in his later years. But he's mostly known for drawing Johnny Hazard and being kind of a little kniff for him. So, you know, I got this really great early Johnny Hazard Sunday page. And, you know, I never see, I'd love to have a shadow page, but I never see that come on. I don't know who has that, or, you know, somebody's sitting on it if it doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not that crazy about the Invaders stuff, you know, the superhero stuff. But I love, you know, I don't know, I just love the, he's an artist too. I think he was much better at drawing people in suits than in spandex.
Well, and, you know, and you can look at it in another way too. I think of like John Buscema, right? His spandex art is pretty expensive. You know, if you're going to try to get an FF page or a Thor page or whatnot. But if you were to get a horror page, because he did a lot of that. Romance, much more affordable.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you're trying to find a good example from an artist whose work you really love, sometimes you have to look a little. You know, you might not be able to get that tier one, you know, the most expensive page out there, but you can get great representative examples from those creators. And for me, that's kind of where I'm at as a collector. I can't afford to buy the high-end pieces, but I'm trying to get representative pieces from a lot of the artists that I've always admired. And you sometimes have to just kind of veer off. You know, you're not going to get an X-Men page, but you're going to get something, a second-tier book. But I think Buscema's like the perfect example. He has a lot of great horror works out there and romance that you can pick up at a nice price. That I couldn't touch this sort of stuff. Every time I see a page, anything that I want, if I try to throw a bid at it, I'm always outbid. I just can't get any pages that I'd really like to have today. So, but you know, the thing is, once at you're a collector and you've got a base of art in your collection, one of the great things about the hobby is it's one where we do a lot of trading. So, you know, a lot of times it depends on how you value your artwork, you know, versus what the other collector values their artwork at. But sometimes a page that, you know, you'll sit down with somebody, you'll say, I really want that, you know, let's see, another page here that's published. There's a Gene Colan, Doctor Strange. That's really nice. But, you know, I've always wanted a page by Colan, and this is inked by Tom Palmer. And as a team, they're just fabulous together. But, you know, I always wanted to get, I really always was looking for like a Daredevil page, something a little different, but I could never afford one. So while this wasn't inexpensive, this was kind of my tier 2 page was to get a Doctor Strange instead. And you know, he's on a couple of the panels. Clea's on it just as much as he is, but it's a great example page by an artist whose work I've always loved, and an inker who's, again, Tom Palmer. You know, I say, you know, we wouldn't have Marvel without Cynical. Palmer was just as influential and as important to comics as an inker, because he was working right at the same time that Joe was, and you know, just an incredible guy, and pretty much anything he touched. I mean, pencilers wanted guys like Cynic and Palmer to do their inking because they knew their work was going to come out great. So yeah, it's okay to get a tier 2 page because you have to have a place to start. At the end of the day, sometimes, you know, as collectors, you may end up amassing several mid-tier pages, but you might be able to go to another collector who's got something you really want. Maybe it's a cover, something that you wouldn't, you know, maybe you don't have the $2,000 to buy it, but they're willing to take trade because, you know, you've got 5 or 6 other pages that you can trade with for that. And it doesn't always work out that way, but it can work out that way. And so as collectors, I mean, that's something that we always have our eye towards is, you know, you want to have a nice body of work that you love, but at the same time, a lot of collectors will pick up things knowing that maybe it's something that they like to have, but they know that down the road they probably won't let go of it because they're gonna. Say I do want to get that Daredevil page by Colan, so maybe I have to have 2 Doctor Strange pages to get that one Daredevil page that I really want. And so, you know, a lot of times it's opportunistic. I met a collector. They had this page. I bought it because, you know, I might not see that page again for a very long time if it's not shared on my site. And it's a collector, because a lot of collectors don't like to share their work. As many do, there's even more that don't. I would say probably only about 20% of the active art collectors that are out there use Comic Art Fans as a place to show their collections, just because A, it takes a lot of time to scan and share, But at the same time, especially as the hobby has evolved into something where the artwork's gotten more and more valuable, a lot of people don't like to share all of their collections, or they'll share maybe the more inexpensive pieces, but they'll keep the more expensive ones hidden away. Because by and large, if I had a really great Gene Colan page, there's probably 10 collectors that want it, and I'll get 10 inquiries a month asking if I want to sell it, or please let me know when you want to sell that page. So a lot of collectors are like, you know what, I don't want to deal with that, but I want to be able to show off my work. I want people to know that I like Gene Colan's work, so they'll show off lesser pages as a way to just kind of let people know that they're still active in the hobby, but they're just showing more inexpensive pieces. But again, this for me is a piece I would never trade. The moment I put it in my calf gallery, a collector contacted me, letting me know that this was from a collection of one of their best friends who had passed away, and they're great. They're happy to see it on the site, but but please don't ever sell it to anybody but me, because it reminds me of my friend who I lost a couple of years ago. And that's the difference in our hobby. You can look at a comic book and they're all the same. They all kind of, if it's a 5.0, whatever, Amazing Fantasy 15, they all kind of look the same, right? But here's a piece of art that has history behind it, because it's passed through several collectors' hands, back into a dealer, to a collector, to another dealer, and then eventually to me. And it means something to somebody, because it reminds them of one of their best friends in the hobby. And again, that's just another interesting aspect of the hobby that you just don't get in many other things in fandom.
One of the coolest things I like about the hobby too are surprises. Occasionally, you'll hear about somebody, like say that Colossus piece that Bill had up there. Because of CAF and the internet and things like that, there's a possibility Marvel could reach out to him and say, hey, we want to make that a cover. And he owns the piece. And they can turn around and make a cover. And that happens. Art Adams did a commission op back in January because he missed Fan Expo in New Orleans. And he did 10 spots and he drew some characters. Well, one guy asked for Chewbacca. And if you went to your local comic book store this week, that's the cover of the Star Wars book. So he commissioned Art Adams, and then Marvel turned it into a cover. Just recently, with 4C, once a month we do a benefit for National Cartoon Society Foundation, which Bill is a part of. He got me involved with that. And we have artists come on and they sketch, and we donate all the money to the National Cartoon Society Foundation. He got a Stan Sakai recently for me. And there was a piece on my wall, it was a Sunday Daily, that was drawn by Alex Savia, written by Stan Lee, inked by Joe Sid, signed by all three guys. And Stan said, can I see that real quick? And I pulled it off the wall and showed it to him, and he goes, I lettered that. What? But yeah, I used to do the lettering for all the Sunday dailies. Like, who knew that? So now I know that Stan Sakai did the lettering on these pieces, and it's just like, what a surprise, you know what I mean? Jeff recently bought a piece, and the top left panel had a stat, and he thought it was original, but he found out it was actually just a photo stat. So he peeled it off very slowly, and underneath was a beautiful panel that wasn't used of art. And it's just, those are things that can happen when you're buying this stuff too. Those little surprises that might happen. I'm still waiting for Marvel to call me and want to make one of my pieces of cover, but it does happen.
It does happen. It's rare, but
it's rare.
But it is a great thing when it does happen. I know that a lot of times when an artist gets a commission that they know they can spend some time on, they do put a lot of extra effort into it. And I mean, as artists, they'll actually send before the artwork goes to the collector, they'll scan it and send it to Marvel or DC or whomever, saying, hey, I made this great image. Maybe I think it has potential to be a cover someday. And so, it's kind of all part of this. Again, it's back to that whole ecosystem of the hobby. That if Bill had some downtime and he was able to take on a $3,000 commission and he put that much time into it, by God, that should be a cover, right? And so, if somebody commissioned him to do that, he should have the opportunity to kind of see if that could get published. And if it did, great for Bill, because he's going to make extra money on that too, and great for the collector, because who commissioned it, because now that piece is probably worth 50% more just because it got published. So yeah, again, and these are things, they didn't happen. I mean, this is something we've been seeing more in the last, say, 5 years, where a lot of people. But again, why did it happen? It really happened because of reps. When the reps came in and were willing to take the time to work with the collectors and the people who are commissioning the artwork, and to probably reinforce the idea to the creators, hey, you know what, put a little extra time in these pieces, we may be able to sell it down the line. That was the rep's job, and I think that and it's worked out well. It's worked out well for the hobby. It's worked out great for the artists, because at the end of the day, we as collectors, you know, we wouldn't have a hobby if Bill wasn't drawing comics, right? I mean, so we owe it to the creators of the comics to make sure that they're, you know, as successful as they should be and could be. You know, back in, you know, you hear stories about page rates in the early Marvel and DC times. I mean, artists didn't have healthcare, all these negatives, and that's why we have things like the Cartoonist Society and Hero Initiative and all these things that do help older creators that are out there. But when we look at today, I mean, I want every artist and every writer and every inker and every letterer, every colorist to be making, you know, their proper share of what what goes into these comics, and in perpetuity. I mean, artists now get to own the rights to, you know, a lot of the new characters that they create, which didn't happen back in the day. And so it's a really great time. But again, you know, when I'm buying art, I really feel like I'm a patron of the arts when I'm doing that. I feel like, you know, I'm putting money back into the creator's hands so that they can continue to make books. And I think that helps keep that artist working in comics, because there might be other opportunities for that creator to go someplace else, do something in advertising, right? Neil Adams did a lot of work in advertising because it was more lucrative. He always was chasing the money. But we, you know, as a buyer, as a comics reader and an art collector, I want Neil drawing comics, right? And so it's important at the end of the day as well, for as art collectors, to be buying art from the creators today, because it just helps guarantee that those creators have an incentive to stay drawing comics.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Page rates in publishing in general are very low. You know, I could do the same amount of work and even the same type of image for an advertising client and make, you know, 5-10 times more money than if I'm doing it for a comic book. So a lot of artists draw comics mainly out of love, because it's just, they love storytelling, they love the work. But if they're working on characters that are popular, that collectors love to collect art of, you know, like Spider-Man or Batman or whoever, then when you're taking a job as an artist, you can go, oh geez, that page rate is really low, but you know, it's Spider-Man, so you know, I can probably sell this, you know, to collectors after it's published, and you know, you actually as an artist factor that part of it in. I mean, it's not guaranteed you're going to sell it, but you know, that is part of the thinking. And if that wasn't there, you know, if somebody says, well, we've only got, you know, $150 a page, that's the only rate we can offer right now, a lot of artists would have to turn that down.
And the hobby's evolving. I mean, you know, NFTs and that thing, that kind of stuff will just make, you know, more opportunities. The big page that I'm sure everybody's heard of, the page that sold from Secret Wars, Mike Zeck, and for it was
$3.37
million. Now that's actually sparked a conversation of, well, maybe artists need to get a residual from more art sales. You know, because obviously Mike Zeck is sitting there saying, "Wow, what do I
sold that page for $100.
I sold that page for $100 25 years ago." And,
Yeah.
you know, so now that there's a conversation being had, you know, maybe artists need to get a piece of anything like that, and you know, because at the end of the day, I mean, you hear the horror stories. I mean, I've heard the story about I think it was John Buscema, you know, being at a con back in the early '90s, and he had a stack of, you know, whole pages like this, $2. I've seen them where it says $2 on the back. You know, and guys would just buy the whole stack from them. I've heard art reps saying where they would buy art from guys by the foot. You know, so it depends how many feet. I mean, you know. So nowadays it's of course not like that. But the older guys, you know, they didn't realize what they had, and now this stuff is so valuable.
Right.
You know, maybe they need to get, you know, a kickback a little bit. And that's where, you know, it's heading. You know, things are changing because of that. I think that's good.
Yeah, because that's part of the NFT thing. It's built in that every time the piece is sold,
Right.
the artist can get, if it's in the contract, the artist can get a residual from it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, I was talking about Bill, you know, I found Simpsons #1. You know, so my first thing as a rep saying, what do we sell for? And Bill's like, well, because he's afraid that he's going to undervalue it. You know, that he's going to sell it for X amount of dollars, and then a month later it's going to go up on Heritage and sell for 15 times what he wanted for, or what he got for it.
And then I'm sitting in my bathroom with a gun in my hand. Who needs that?
And unfortunately, it's happened. It's happened. You know, where somebody will tell you, Bill, I'm a huge collector and I love this stuff. And I'm a huge fan of your art. And he says, he's such a great guy, pulling his heartstrings. He goes, you know, I'm gonna give this guy a deal. And then I get a phone call. Ken, I can't believe it. The guy just sold it for 10 times what I sold it for on Heritage. And it's like, yeah, unfortunately, that kind of stuff is happening. You know, so.
Well, and that's what makes the hobby different from comics, is that, and I mentioned that at the beginning, that pricing is subjective, right? It really is. If you need, all you need is two collectors that want that same piece, and if it's at auction, a page that you think should sell for $500 could sell for $5,000 because two people really want it. And does that change? Say it is Gene Colan, Tom Palmer, Doctor Strange page. Does that make every page, you know, by that creative team on that title worth $5,000? Absolutely not, because the next page in that book can go up for auction, and maybe there's only, you know, one of those buyers are there, or those two guys aren't there, and it sells for half that, or a third that. And so pricing in the hobby is, well, today it's really difficult just because since the pandemic, the prices have typically gone up 50%. I mean, it's the same thing as that's happening in the housing market is happening in the collectibles markets, as many people have seen. But that's what makes, you know, it a bit challenging as a collector and somebody who wants to get into the hobby, is just trying to understand the pricing. I really feel like when you're coming to a con and you're getting convention sketches, that's a little bit easier to understand because, okay, the artist is charging X for a head sketch versus a full figure, those sorts of things, and you can understand it. But when you're looking at published pieces that, you know, again, you know, in the example of that piece that sold for $3.37 million, there were about 5 buyers or bidders in on that piece up to about $1.5 million. And honestly, as a collector, I didn't think it should have sold for more than $800,000. So it just shows you that, and even then, that was my pie in the sky thing. I mean, trust me, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but the thing is, it just took a couple bidders to bring it up to that level. So, you know, there was another piece that recently went on the market and was sold by another auction house that sold for, I believe, around $30,000 from the same book, a couple pages after that one. And that guy's trying to sell it now and can't, because he can't get to $30,000 for it. You know, it's because he kind of overpaid, maybe speculated a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with it. The art's great, but sometimes you have to hold on to the art a little bit longer than you might have to. I mean, the guy who paid $3.37 million, if you put that back on Heritage, I guarantee you it's not going to sell for $2.5 million. I mean, he'd be lucky if he, you know, maybe that underbidder might still be out there, but probably not, because you know what? They moved on and probably picked up something else, and they're not willing to spend that kind of money on it again. So when you're buying published art, especially art that has any value from a title and a creative team that's of any importance, you just don't know what you're going to spend on it, because there was that everybody was lamenting the Dazzler cover, the painted Dazzler cover that sold for $48,000 or something, and everybody was thinking it should sell for $75,000 or $80,000. I didn't think it should have sold for $25,000, because I mean, just knowing where it was at 2 years ago, that was my opinion. But everybody was really confident it was going to go for much higher. So again, it's all very subjective. I mean, I've been in the hobby a long enough time. I write market reports every week on comic art fans, and I can't follow the market today. It's really tough. But
where do you guys think that Frank Miller Dark Knight 1 cover is going to go?
you know, I haven't really given it too much thought yet. But I don't know. I could speculate and say 2.25. You know, 2.25 million would be. But you know what? It could go higher.
Yeah.
Because you know, it could go as high as, because you know, just because book and series, that was a turning point in comics. You know, from a creative perspective, from a publishing perspective. I mean, that book changed everything. The format of that book was so exquisite, you know, at the time, and it is probably one of the most important comic book covers, you know, in the last 30 years by a creator that, while controversial at times, I mean, he's well collected. And interior pages from that series, the first series, is incredibly expensive these days. So I don't know. It's hard to say. What do you think? I mean,
Well, you know,
because I still feel
I think it could break records. Personally, I think you know, I think the Zec page although you said, I agree with you, it probably oversold. I think we also set a bar. And, I think that Miller, the significance of that book and that cover, I mean, it could go for 10 million. I mean, it could really just shatter records. But when you talk about value of it, like I said, I was in sports marketing memorabilia for a long time. And there was a curve. I mean, it peaked in the 90s and it went like this, and now it's kind of going like that. When I started 4C, I did my research. I'm an analytical kind of guy. And if you look at comp card, it's been like this for 25 years. It's slowly going up, and it's spiking now, but no, it's always had a gradual rise of investment, I mean, it's a good investment at the end of the day. Very rarely do people lose money on things. And it's funny, if you ever watch Dueling Dealers, which you should all be watching Dueling Dealers, a lot of times Anthony will put up a piece of art, and you'll hear Mike Berkey say, "Oh, I own that."
Yeah,
Or Andy will say, "Oh, I own that." This stuff passes through their hands. Sometimes the stuff passes through their hands multiple times. And
Well, both of those guys have been in business for 25, 30 years, so they've had a lot of art.
Yeah, so,
passed through their
art-
hands. So, Mike will have bought a complete book from somebody and broken it up, and then a page comes back to him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But again, those are things that make the hobby fun, because it's like the guy who remembered, thinks of the page from his friend that had passed away. There's a history on all these pieces.
Yeah.
And you have that in comics too, right? You've got the pedigree collections and those sorts of things. So but in art we don't really follow that. But if you've been in the hobby long enough, you kind of know who used to own what, or who owns what now, and that it's a fun part of the hobby, because collectors kind of become celebrities in their own way. I mean, there's some pretty high-profile collectors in the hobby, and again, when you see them, you get pretty excited. Oh, it's Alex. You're going to be up on stage here real soon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Bill's been warming up. You're in trouble.
Eric Larson collects art.
No, that's
Yeah, I did that.
That's
I
Steve
did
Collins.
that. That's me.
That's you?
Yeah, that's me, I did that.
Okay, I'll move. I quit.
If you guys know Eric Larson, the image, he collects only whole books. So he actually has people who will, if he has a book that he wants, they'll seek out every page. And once he can get it, that's how he collects it.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Eric Larson.
Oh, wow, I got lots of complete stories now.
Yeah. I was just telling a story about the Sunday Daily that was, I found out that Stan Cicada.
Oh,
did
yeah,
the lettering
yeah.
on it,
I know.
So, there are so many artists, because I interview guys, Bill interviews guys, and the first thing I always ask, do you collect? And almost all of them collect. And some have great, Dan DiCarlo, he's got it all. I mean, if you want Dan DiCarlo piece, you gotta go to Bill, but he's not gonna sell it. So, the collectors are also the artists, which is really cool. They usually don't collect their own stuff.
Yeah, most artists, which is, again, getting back to the whole rep thing, it's like, I show you a piece and go, what do you think I should sell that for? And then the price you usually come up with based on what you know is out there and what people are spending is usually way higher than what I would value it at.
Yeah.
Because I go, well, that's something I get. It's not as great as this thing that I collect. That's just, something I drew on my lunch out.
But yeah, a lot of artists today, because I've been interviewing artists a little bit more, they're approaching their art sales very differently. A lot of them are kind of holding back. I was talking with Sean Gordon Murphy a month ago, and his art rep, and they've kind of come up with their own strategy for selling as originals now, where they're holding pieces back. They kind of grade what pieces are there, and they're like, we're going to hold these as retirement pieces. And and it's a wise thing to do, right? Because at the end of the day, a cover from him today might be worth say $8,000 to $10,000, but if he holds on to it for another 10 years, it might be a $40,000 or $50,000 cover. And and as we talked about earlier, artists by and large don't have retirement plans and those sorts of things. So it's better to pull a few pieces back, sell something you want to, but keep some for later, and use those later in life, because you just never know where you're going to be. So again, our hobby is in a very unique spot today. But to me, again, I think we're all in a better position because of reps, because we're engaging with the artists differently, and again, I think just being able to buy artwork directly from creators and put money back in their pockets has been like the biggest joy for me that in the last 5 years, and again, it's great to be back in front of everybody in live panels. Ken and I have been doing live streams for the last 2 years, and it's fun, but it's a drag. You know, at the end of the day, it's a lot of work to do those things, but I'm really looking forward to doing more panels like these. This is a piece by Mike Mignola, by the way, not Hellboy at all. Of course, Rocket Raccoon, but a really nice piece. It's really hard to get a page from the miniseries, but and I wanted one for literally probably 18 years. When I first got in the hobby, I always was looking for a Rocket Raccoon page, and I finally found one about a year ago, and I got it from Berkey, who had it in a bin that he didn't even know he had it. So I was digging around and found it, and we worked out a good deal on a piece like that. So, but great representative example from an artist whose style doesn't look like anything like this right now, but this is really a good example of his early work at Marvel.
I was at Bill and Lexington Comic-Con a few months ago, and Kevin Eastman was there. And I was talking to Trevor about some stuff, and he told me, somebody asked him like the price of a piece, and he said, whatever it was, $300 for a piece. And the guy kind of scoffed at it. Last year it was $200. He goes, no, this year's $300. And the price is never going down. And that's what I think people need to understand, that the price you get quoted today, he's not going to discount it 6 months from now. It's just going to keep going up. But I joke around with Bill's wife all the time. I say, when Bill kicks the bucket, we're going to have the biggest yard sale ever.
But this is a good example. I mean, we really haven't talked about art as a medium, but like Mike Allred, he has his own, generally a smaller size page that he works on. He works on a page that's this size, whereas a standard 11 by 17 page is about like that. But it really comes back to whatever the creator feels most comfortable working on. I mean, he's drawing it practically proper size at 100%, whereas 11 by 17s are scaled up a bit. But prior to that, they drew on twice up. So you're going to see a lot of different sizes of boards out there for published work. But I've always loved Allred's work because I like having a piece of comic art that's the same size and close to the size of the comic.
When I was going through Bill's art, I found a lot of pieces of paper basically that had a cover design on it that Bill drew, and I asked him, I said, what are these, prelims? He goes, no, that's the finished pencils. He said he liked to draw, so he asked Bongo to make a template so he would know what the aspect ratio of the logo would be and everything like that, because he said he had a problem when he sized it sometimes.
Yeah, I used to draw the cover, and then I would turn it into the production department, and they would go, you didn't leave us any room for the cover copy or the logo, or you gotta leave some space. So I had them make me a template, so I knew exactly where all the copy and trade dress and everything was going to go. So it gave me my space to draw in.
So people are used to 11 by 17. No, a cover being 11 by 17. No, those covers are 8.5 by 11 pages. With static. Some are bigger. Yeah. But it's just what the artist prefers to do. There's some artists that draw 18 by 24. Gee, big giant.
Yeah. We should wrap it up like Bill's saying, but yeah, if you're into the hobby and you're just getting started collecting, comicartfans.com is a great place to kind of just see other collectors' work. We also I work with probably 30 art dealers, so it's an easy site to go to search about 200,000 pieces of art that are actually available for sale at the same time. So, and you can sort it by price, so it's really easy to kind of at least get a bird's eye view of the hobby before you dive into it and start purchasing original artwork. And again, I would encourage everybody to pick up artwork from the artists and artist alley that are here today, whether you're getting a convention sketch or a published piece. Patronize the artists, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who make our hobby great, and we wouldn't have a hobby without guys like Bill.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks, guys.
it. All right. Thanks, Bill. That was fun. I'll try.